No, I'm not going to claim that.
Okay.
They were made differently. I could have fixed any car probably before 1952. You know, tune up the stuff, and maybe even if I had Little Hill put in a motor as far as that goes, timing and all that business. I was a trained mechanic in the Army. I spent 3 months in learning how to fix cars, and I got a corporal rating out of that. There's news for all these people that wonder if Sutherland can tie his shoes here. I used to sell the bikes every year. So I'd run out of money. And, well, also I have to admit, it wasn't only money. Biking was not that much of an interest. It was just too darn dangerous. And then through friends and acquaintances, I found out where the bike was. And 3 years ago, when my brother went down to see Ollie, and Ollie Sorensen, is that?
Foreman.
Yeah, Foreman, and saw my dear bike. It doesn't have the nice kind of bags I had on mine. It looks kind of tiny. A lot of I got some good shots of the bike with my rollie that make it look big and powerful and kind of beautiful, like a real beautiful pony. And anyway, compared to Pirsig's bike from a distance, that looked like a little mosquito going down the road there with a bunch of junk on it with these packs he had and those goofy glasses he wore. And then he had a I'm elaborating now, but he had some kind of a raincoat thing with some special rubber shoes. And it was like we've come from some camp in Siberia or something when we stop at some of these places. And I remember people would be gawking at us, mainly at him. He had these weird glasses on. And I think Sylvia and myself looked a little more normal. At least we looked like, I wore beads, and so I had kind of a hippie thing going. But I think Bob looked pretty strange in his little get up there. Anyway. I mentioned being informed. If they're going to get involved with this book, read a couple of the books that are mentioned in the Zen book, such as The Meeting of East and West by F.S.C. Northrop. Very good book. Also, read a little bit on Western and Oriental philosophy. Also, a set of books I really like for poetry, haiku, R.H. Blythe. There's 4 volumes of his poetry. The first one on Japanese culture. That should be read. Another thing, in rereading Bob's book, in fact, I told Lee this morning, how similar our backgrounds were. Same neighborhoods, very similar experiences on reading Oriental philosophy, and some of the people we knew, our ages are the same. I think Bob's 80, I'm 80. Divorced, we're both divorced. I think, well, I'm really kind of exaggerating now. I think my life has been a much happier life. He's got a lot of money now. I'm still, well, I finally have enough, I think, to keep me going until I need assistant living or something. I'm very fortunate to have. I think I've had a happier life than Bob has had. One thing I'll hand him, he doesn't want to have interviews smartly. He's not a big show-off public-wise. That's cool. Also, he tells people, rightly so, you don't have to interview me. Read my books. It's all in Lila and the Zen book. And but I also, as I told Lee, he's already read it, not all of it. They should read the book Guide to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, because it is a nice introduction by the 2 Jesuit scholars on Oriental philosophy, tied in with, Well, also, there's some cute little references to me in their book, too. Um, Pirsig wanted to use me if a movie was made. He suggested I play myself, and I don't think Redford wanted to go for that number. But I think whether they'll ever make a movie out of that, to me, there are some geniuses now that make these movies. I don't know how a movie could be made. There's some modes in there, such as I found today reading the parts. I was telling Lee, he's been to Pirsig's school, that room they have found where he taught, and those other rooms where he lectured, that could be a great movie thing. There's a mood in there of loneliness and Phaedrus in the shadows that is remarkable, and Pirsig captured this. First time around in reading that book, I thought, well, God, this is a dumb style. Now we're going to have a sermon. I think it's worked out appropriately. I much more appreciate it. Now, this is probably the fourth time I've gone through that than I did in the first beginnings when I started to read it. Number one, I would say, and I have to preface my answer this way, I've been reading Quaker literature, which is very democratic, in quotation marks. A question has to have an input of maybe several other questions, which Pirsig mentions in the book. You get one hypothesis going, it opens up for 20,000 more. On the other hand, you could slim that down, but you need the input not of one person or one hierarchy. This is where I disagree with Pirsig in a way. His hierarchy, we'll call it the old Lutheran way. There's mom and dad, especially dad. Then it goes down. He's the head of the company. Then you get down to the workers and blah, blah, blah. Actually, I'll see these old movies on Masterpiece Theater, and I like it for the scenery and the culture, but it'll show those old estates. Well, all those guys that worked the estate actually knew more than the guys, the lords and what have you, that owned the estate. They couldn't even tie literally their own shoes sometimes. So the point being is when you have these things going, there has to be the constant input of other people. A good teacher, and I don't think Pirsig had that talent of bringing in other students, like my dear friend, Professor David White of McAllister. I want to cry when I think of him. I still go by their house once or twice a week. It's over on Lincoln, off of Lincoln and St. Paul. And he knew how to bring in 4 or 5 of us, because we'd go to his special seminars, including Joan Adams was there, and a Japanese student and a couple others. And these are, a couple of them were from farms that didn't know who Kant was. As a little shaky whether that was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus or what. But he got us all to think, as I've already stated, almost like little children. What are the things we should worry about? What is quality? But was the input of several of us, no final answers, but the problem and the answers were to be worked at later on. And that, in part, Pirsig has said, but I have carried that. I have all the stuff to worry about and think about until I pass on. And part of that is, well, maybe a little bit of Pirsig, but it's all the ways that you can keep working at these problems, and not enough is being done at this point concerning that type of real quality in politics, religioso thinking, and in everyday behavior. Part of this is due to technology.
Technology causes the decline of quality?
In part, yeah. Someone else will do it for me. I was telling Lee an experiment I had with my grandson. He doesn't know north and south from east and west. He can put on all these machines, these cell phones. He can even, he's written also some little movies. God, he was only 9 or 10. Now he's 14. He doesn't know the sun comes up, or when it goes down. And, of course, nothing about politics. And it's pathetic. Even TV used to be better. It was simpler, just to find a few problems. And Cook was his name. Excellent program on American culture, American history. It's on Channel 2. My other great professor, I took everything he taught, Mulford Q. Sibley. My God, at first I thought there's only a Republican Party, Democratic Party, whatever mess they're fighting about over in Europe. My God, there's hundreds of different ways to think of politics, the right and wrong, religious attitudes towards killing and not killing, etc., etc. The goodness that can come out of the UN if it's used, and all that stuff. Well, that's what's not being taught. Now it's just little things, and the computer will take care of most of this. A guy showed me a paper he's done on Ellington. Hell, I could read that on the back of an LP old record cover. He's got it off of TV. I know he hasn't read this Zen book, but he's an expert on that too, on Pirsig's book. And it's all a bunch of BS. They're not really thinking, whether it's civil rights, how we should treat different ethnics in our country, what have you. It's all cliches now, and part of that, granted, it's not just technology, but it's dedicated to whether our market can make a buck. That almost works in itself than just the technology that they can use, because they have the power and the goods to spread whatever view they think we ought to have, such as, God, now we might go to war with Iran. Now, the question, how many people, just a simple one, how many should we kill to get our way in the Middle East? And, well, what are you talking? Well, that's what I'm talking about. God, no wonder they hate us. We just found out 9 more got killed. They were on our side. We got that all screwed up due to technology. Some of the bombings being done from Washington, D.C., for God's sake, like President Johnson down in his basement. We killed probably over 2 million in Vietnam. And now we've displaced twice that amount of people, no homes or anything in the Middle East. All this is by not thinking quality, the ends and means to get to quality. Some of it can be technology used wisely. Some of it, maybe we have to watch this technology. We'll make a decision. It happens awful fast. Oop, we missed again. And yeah, the village went up in flame. And